The increasing gale or storm signal number 9 now in force as Super Typhoon Saola comes close to Hong Kong. Preparations for the approach of Saola in flood-prone areas around the city. And Thailand's king commutes Thaksin Shinawat's prison sentence to 1 year. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The Hong Kong Observatory issued the increasing gale or storm signal number 9 at 6:20 p.m. The weather forecaster said it believes the strong winds from Super Typhoon Saola will significantly pick up later this evening. It expects the impact to be at its strongest between this afternoon and midnight. High-altitude cloud images show Saola has a double eye wall structure and might continue to gain momentum. The observatory is assessing whether to issue the hurricane signal number 10 later, depending on local wind changes. Timothy Lee has our top story.
Continuous squally showers drenched areas around the Hong Kong Ferry Pier throughout the afternoon. Unforgiving winds could be seen bending umbrellas out of shape. These are just some scenes in the city today, as residents waited for the impending arrival of Super Typhoon Saola. Early on Friday evening, the tropical cyclone was concentrated around 90 kilometers southeast of Hong Kong. Weather authorities forecast the tropical cyclone to continue on its northwest trajectory at a speed of 12 kilometers per hour, edging towards the Pearl River estuary. Senior scientific officer of the observatory, Lee Shuk-ming, said according to the current path of Super Typhoon Saola, it will skirt along the south of the SAR at a distance of 40 kilometers sometime around midnight. Images taken by the government flying service captured Saola undergoing a weather phenomenon known as the eye wall replacement cycle. Lo-Wing Mo, a former assistant director of the observatory, said it is a common natural occurrence in strong typhoons.
Most of the time, we know that for very strong typhoons, they do have an eye wall. It is where the strongest upward convection occurs. So when we talk about the intensity of the typhoon, it always meant it's always referred to the maximum wind that occurred at the eye wall.
Regarding the emergence of the secondary eye wall, Leung said it will lead to further intensity of strong winds.
It will take over the old eye wall and become a new one. So eventually, we only have one eye wall. This is a process involving a lot of energy transfer, a lot of energy replacement, and so forth and so on. So at a certain point in time, the intensity of the typhoon will weaken a little bit. But after the completion of the eye wall replacement, it will intensify again.
The weather expert also warned of the possible danger the tropical cyclone could cause in the SAR.
We don't know when it will be completed. If and when it is completed before it reaches Hong Kong, then Super Typhoon Saola will remain is a very intense intensity. So in any case, irrespective of eye wall replacement or not, Super Typhoon Saola remains a very severe threat to all of Hong Kong.
Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The weather began deteriorating this afternoon. The city's flooding hotspots have also hunkered down in preparation for the downpours and wind gusts. Jackie Lin was at one of the most flood-prone districts in Hong Kong.
Winds gathered more strength in the afternoon. A 4-meter tall tree collapsed onto a motorbike under gusty winds in Ngau Tau Kok. But some wind chasers went to the coast of Hang Fa Tsuen to feel the impact of the storm. It's 3 to 4 in the afternoon in Hang Fa Tsuen. As you can see, the winds and rain are not that strong for now, but residents here told us they're not letting their guard down as their memory is still fresh about how the storm surges inundated underground car parks and the gusts uprooted trees and even benches during the typhoons back in 2017 and 2018. With that in mind, the community has installed flood barriers like these behind me in a bid to minimize damage.
But by the look of things, the strength of the storm, it could be worse than last time, mangled. But in last time, it caught us by surprise. Okay, but this time we should be prepared. Yeah.
We just want to pay, and we are just looking for the wind. Is it strong or not? Is it strong or not?
It's strong.
It's strong.
Schools are closed today, but a student told us he'd rather go to classes.
Staying at home, it is nothing to do. I cannot know my friends and I cannot play with them.
Some civil aid services personnel called on people to leave the shoreline. In flood-prone district Lei Yu Moon, the tidal backflow began to affect the low-lying areas in the afternoon. This restaurant manager said more preparations were made to prevent inventory and electrical appliances from being ruined. Gates, flood barriers, and sandbags, similar sites of combat readiness in another flooding hotspot, Tai O. This as signs of floods already emerged this morning. Patrols too ramped up from civil aid services personnel and police officers. Inundation 2 in Shatin Shemun River. The bicycle track and pedestrian tunnel with comparatively high risk of flooding have been cordoned off. Stepped up flood protection efforts too along the Chernkwano Promenade, which was badly damaged during Typhoon Mangkhut in 2018. Despite authorities warning against all water sports, some surfers paddled out in Big Wave Bay this morning. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Under the storm, some shoppers rushed to stock up on food. While shopping malls appear to have fewer people, some restaurants are bustling with patrons. Some cinemas are still open. Lines too at a bakery in Lohas Park. In some supermarkets, vegetables, dairy products, and even frozen food have been snapped up. Some greengrocers at the market also say their businesses have gone up by 50%. A vendor says the vegetables wholesale prices have been bumped up by 20%, so the retail prices are also higher than usual. Under the number 9 signal, most public transport services have stopped, including parts of the MTR. Mimo Singai reports.
For many residents, today is an extra holiday thanks to the super typhoon Saola, but some still have to work despite the adverse weather. This man who works in the catering industry said he has spent more time on commuting. My journey to work usually takes 45 minutes. It took me extra 15 minutes today, he said. As the increasing gale or storm signal number 9 has been issued, train services in open sections and light rail services are suspended, such as the Airport Express, Disneyland Resort line, and Chunwa line between Chunwan Station and Liking Station. Most daytime bus services are also suspended. While taxi services are still available, some people said the cost of each journey shot up. Meanwhile, public services are suspended, including general outpatient clinics. At the international airport, some people arrived early to check in as they were uncertain about the weather situation. For instance, this student had to return to UK for school. We arrived at the airport in the middle of the night, he said. His mum was pleased that the flight was not delayed, adding they came to the airport even before the number 8 signal was issued. Airport authorities said while about 600 flights were able to take off today, 460 flights were cancelled. The AA hopes airport services can gradually resume on Saturday, adding it will depend on the weather. Nonetheless, the airport will remain open, with staff providing food to stranded travellers. Mimo Singai, TVB News.
Former Thailand Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra has had his prison term of 8 years reduced to 1 by the king. The monarch's decision was published in today's Royal Gazette. Shinawatra returned to Bangkok last week after 15 years in exile. The ex-leader has been convicted of abuse of power and was immediately sent to jail on his return, but was later moved to a prison hospital because of frail health. Thailand's king said Thaksin was a prime minister and has done a good job for the country, the people, and is loyal to the monarchy. Thaksin was removed as prime minister in 2006 in a military coup, but is still a popular political figure in Thailand. Welcome back. Former UK Energy Minister Grant Shapps is the new British Secretary of Defence. Shapps has been chosen by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to succeed Ben Wallace, who is standing down as a politician at the next election. David Garrett reports.
Ben Wallace has left big shoes to fill. He's led the British Armed Forces for 4 years. A former army captain, he's been a staunch ally of Ukraine and critic of Vladimir Putin's invasion.
He will not succeed, and the international community will only get stronger in their opposition to this aggression.
Wallace officially tendered his resignation on Thursday, honouring a promise he'd made last month. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has had a few weeks to decide on Wallace's replacement. Shapps is a seasoned media performer who supported Sunak during his successful campaign to become Conservative Party leader and Prime Minister last year. Shapps has been Transport Secretary and Party Chair. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss called him the best communicator in the Cabinet. She briefly made him Home Secretary. Shapps arrived at Downing Street to take up the post.
Are you the new Defence Secretary?
He's seen as a safe pair of hands.
Drop your pen, Defence Secretary.
Later he arrived at the Ministry of Defence to take up his new role and meet his advisers. Shapps has no defence experience. As Energy Minister, he visited Kiev last month, where he announced the UK would guarantee a $245 million export finance deal for Ukraine to buy nuclear fuel from producers, including British companies. The British government named Claire Coutinho as Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, replacing Shapps. The ruling party faces a general election in the next 18 months. A poll last week had the Tories trailing the opposition Labour Party by as much as 17 percentage points. The new Defence Secretary will have a role to play in mounting a Conservative fight back. David Garrett, TVB News.
More than 150 schools in England were told to close some buildings after they were deemed unsafe. This has drawn anger from parents and teachers on the eve of a new term. It also poses a fresh headache for the government. The affected school buildings used a certain type of concrete prone to collapsing, posing safety concerns. The concrete is called reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, known as RAAC. According to the Education Department, RAAC is found in 573 schools across England. For most of the schools, the concrete is only found in a few buildings, so students can still attend school. This follows 6 months of strikes by teachers in 2023. Also in the U.S., 2 former leaders of the far-right Proud Boys extremist group were each sentenced to more than a decade in prison on Thursday. The 2 spearheaded an attack on the U.S. Capitol, trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power from Donald Trump to Joe Biden after the 2020 presidential election. Joseph Biggs was given a 17-year prison sentence and Zachary Rell a 15-year sentence. Federal prosecutors had recommended a 33-year sentence for Biggs, who helped dozens of Proud Boys members and associates in marching to the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. They joined the mob that broke through the police lines and forced lawmakers to flee. Their action disrupted the joint session of Congress for certifying the electoral victory by Democrat Joe Biden. The attending physician to the U.S. Congress has cleared Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell to continue with his planned schedule. This after McConnell appeared to freeze up for about 30 seconds while speaking to reporters in Kentucky Wednesday. It was the second such episode in public this summer for McConnell. The latest incident has further fueled concern over his health and speculation as to whether McConnell can remain the GOP leader in the U.S. Senate. But in a statement, the congressional physician said he had consulted with McConnell and his neurology team and had evaluated the incident. And the physician has informed the 81-year-old that he's been medically cleared to continue with his schedule as planned. In March, McConnell suffered a concussion and broke a rib after falling and hitting his head. His doctor remarked that lightheadedness is not uncommon in concussion recovery. Pope Francis has arrived in Mongolia for a 4-day visit. Mongolia has only 1,500 Catholics in a population of just 3 million. The Pope has made it his mission to visit places where Catholics are a minority. Mongolia is a predominantly Buddhist nation, so many people in Mongolia are not bothered about the papal visit. Still, he received a state welcome with a military guard and red carpet. After his 10-hour flight, he was offered solid yogurt, which is the traditional Mongolian welcome. The 86-year-old now needs a wheelchair. The Pope sent messages of goodwill to all countries he flew over, which included China. He told President Xi Jinping that he would pray for the well-being of the nation. That is the news. Stay safe and try to stay dry. Bye for now.